Alright my dudes, what's up? Mystery here. I just tried to record this video and went 40 minutes of rambling and didn't really come to any conclusion, so let's try this again. We're talking about the melee Hive Scum today. I'm going to try to keep it as concise as possible, but I do have a lot to say here. I think that the class is flawed. I think it has some good elements to it, and I'll address all that. Great. Okay, let's get to that in a second. I do want to first say two things. One is a correction from last time, which is that the rocket launcher, it doesn't get buffed with range damage. Who would have thunk? That was me trusting what I saw online with Cooley's guide, and I believe it also did work like that in the first patch of the class that I had, so that could just be why we both had that wrong. This is a situation of trust but verify, guys, right? You should trust me but verify by checking it yourself. I should also do the same thing to the sources that I get my information from. So thanks for pointing that out. And does it change how I feel about the rocket launcher? No, not really. It should just still be buffed so that it can one-shot crushers in like a 15-foot radius. Just make it like the anti-armor weapon in the game, because we've got the big blast of the the Ogren Frag Bomb that like kills everything except for crushers in like a massive radius. We've got the Toxic Grenade in the class, and really like what does the class need to round out its complement of nades? It needs something to bust armor. That's where the class lacks, so give it something that can nuke a fucking crusher pack from orbit and make the damage like really strong anti-armor so that it's not like nuking bosses to instant death, like, because that would be stupid and it would be boring for people in lower difficulties if you just have a Hive Scum there who just pulls out the rocket launcher and blows up every beast in a row you see. So that's what I want to say about that. Let's also say just some general stuff. How do I feel about this class, and why am I saying that it's weak or like, you know, needs rebalancing when I'm making builds for it or whatever? Guys, the class is super fun and you can get a lot of value out of this class, especially if you have high skill. I think that a lot of people that don't understand my perspectives are probably just playing on different like difficulties and using like different, like sort of having different challenges than me. If you were playing on low difficulty, like up to Heresy or even Damnation or Auric, and you're a skilled player, you're gonna feel like a god in this class because the damage is there, like the damage is high and you can be untouchable and just murder everything before it even gets to attack you. When you go beyond that, you start having to play defensive as well as offensive, and that is where the class really starts to struggle. You go ruh-roh raggy because enemies don't die instantly when you attack them, and then they get to attack you back, which means you had to dodge that attack, and that gets very complicated very fast. Plus there's a million other complicating factors in Darktide, as opposed to like how Slayer Barden played, where it's, hey, just dodge the melee attacks that come at you, right? This game has so much more bullshit going on, and this class is not forgiving for that at all. And then there's players on the very low end who are like just getting completely dunked on because the class has a prerequisite of knowing how to dodge. And if you haven't learned how to dodge, or you just CBA to learn how to dodge, which I completely understand, then this class is just gonna fuck you. And that sucks. I don't think that any class should be designed like that. I personally think that I like the idea they were going for here with like having a glass cannon build, but I think that's a really poor idea for a class that is launched for money, because there was no way to relay that to players. Like, guys, don't buy this if you are not good at dodging, because who's going to self-identify as not good at dodging, first of all, and how seriously you're going to take them? It's still a fun class, and you can like overpower stuff, but like if you really suck, yeah, this class is going to not be good for you. And I think that they can do this sort of thing, but they need to do like Martyrdom, right? Martyrdom is a perfect example of this. If you're a high skill player on Zealot, you can take Martyrdom and you can drop your health to 1 HP and you get massive buffs out of it. And that is cool, right? If that was how the class played, if you had a stim that made you take like 100% more damage to do 100% more damage, that would be a great way to balance a glass cannon. And then just have the class be a normal class outside of that, and then have your stim effects be the things that like can ultimately turn you into the corrupted demon version, where you have all damage, all gas, and no breaks. That would be a great way to approach this class, because it would give players who do not have those prerequisite skills and don't have the time to get them a way to actually play the class. Because the class is fun, it's just that like you only get to have so much fun before you're kissing the fucking ground, unless you have quote-unquote gotten good. So that's my prerequisite thoughts. Now let's talk about melee, guys. let's try to put my thoughts together here. What I'm going to do today is I'm going to compare two classes. We are going to compare these two classes because this other class is the perfect analog. It's the perfect comparison to the Hive Scum. This other class that I am talking about is a glass cannon melee fighter, extremely fleet of foot, focused on crit, has a DPS oriented ultimate and a DPS keystone. They are incredibly selfish, meaning their only contribution to the team is the DPS that they bring. They are bringing the fucking damage. They're like, stand back guys, I got this, let me solo her. Like, that is what they're coming to the class to do. And if you haven't figured it out yet, guys, what class am I describing? Post it in the comments below. What if you think, oh, and like and subscribe if you like this sort of analysis and my thoughts on the matter. But yeah, I'm describing the melee Psyker. The melee Psyker is what the Hive Scum wants to be in melee. It is literally one-to-one. The Hive Scum dreams of being the melee Psyker. And these two have so much in common. It's going to be kind of ludicrous when I go through and like point out the ways that they have like things like they're very, very similar in design, but the Hive Scum just gets them all wrong. Or maybe the melee Psyker just gets them too right, and like this is the new direction we're going in. But the problem is that I don't think that the melee Psyker is going to be nerfed anytime soon, because it's one of, if not the best melee build in the game. It is insane. If you haven't seen it, go look at like Melee Psyker 2 on my channel. You know, like absurd builds, and they do so much damage, but it's a hard build to play. So like it doesn't see wider adoption because if you can't dodge, you get your shit wrecked. And what does that remind you of, right? Excepting it's way more forgiving than that, and it has way more uptime on its damage. And that is sort of the crux of the whole thing. So we're going to divide this conversation, the remainder of it anyway, into two parts. We've got the damage part and the defense part. And we'll start by talking about the damage part. These two classes, I would say, have comparable damage, except the Hive Scum only hits that comparable damage when he is at the climax of his power. The problem here, though, is that much like myself, this climax only comes in little spurts. Like you only have about 20 seconds or so where you're actually at that peak power, and then if you aren't focusing on it, if you aren't staying engaged in combat constantly, you're going to lose that power. You are going to lose your keystone ability, you're going to lose your actual ability, you're going to lose the stim effect, and when those things start falling off of you, you enter into a state where you are nowhere near as effective at combat as you were just a moment before. And that sort of unevenness in a class that is already really fragile and vulnerable to getting exploded, that's not good. Like, we don't want to have that. So let's go ahead and compare the abilities. And this is the really cool thing. Another great comparison point for these two classes is that both of these classes have very little talents in the actual talent tree that add additional damage to the class. It's not like you're playing Zealot here where there's a million nodes in the tree. They're like 15% extra damage to this, 50% extra damage to that. It's like there's like 2 nodes in each one of these trees that actually add damage. Most of their damage comes from their ability and their keystone. That's where you get most of their damage from. Now, there are a couple of outliers there, but I'm going to keep this thing like kind of level. I'm going to say that the fact that every single melee Hive Scum uses hyper lethal and hyper critical, because those talents are so good, is effectively a wash with the fact that every single Psyker uses Force Greatsword. So every Psyker is going to use Force Greatsword. Every Hive Scum is going to use hypercritical, hyperlethal. We cannot even worry about considering those. Let's just focus on the abilities, and we'll show where this new class goes awry from the message, from the path. And I think a lot of you know where I'm going with this already, because we have the ability Rampage. I'll put it on the screen for you here. Rampage gives you 50% damage, 50% attack speed, 25% damage reduction, and some stagger stun resistance. Yeah. And it lasts for 10 seconds. You can extend it by 0.3 seconds every time you get a melee hit, which means cleaving hordes can give you lots of extra time. However, it has a cap of 10 seconds, so even if you're murderizing the shit out of a horde, you cannot go over that cap. If you spend 10 seconds without combat, no matter what situation you're in, you will have the ability fade. And when it does fade, you lose all of your stamina, and you are given a crippling debuff of having 75% reduced stamina regeneration and 25% increased damage taken for 7 seconds. So you exit this ability and you're in the worst possible state to fight a fight, because This class actually draws a lot of its power additionally from having stamina, because you get a talent over on the left side there that gives you additional attack speed per stamina that you currently have. And when you lose all your stamina, you lose that attack speed as well. So you went from an ability which was active, which gave you effectively doubles your damage, like it doubles your DPS output is roughly what it breaks down to not having that. And in fact, you now have no stamina and you're taking extra damage. So you fucking plummet back to earth. Compare that to Scryer's Gaze, which gives you additional crit. Here it is on the screen. You can read it if you want. It gives you additional crit, weak spot damage, flat damage. It gives you, what else? Like movement speed and shit. I don't know. Like, Scryer's Gaze is nuts. It's like 15 pages long. Toughness damage reduction, 2.5% toughness. We'll get back to that when we talk about the toughness or the defenses section. And you also gain damage while you're in Scryer's Gaze over time. And this lasts after you leave Scryer's Gaze. So while this ability is active, meaning you don't cap your peril, you're gaining peril the whole time. While it's active, you're gaining more damage each second you spend in it. And you can make that go faster if you take a node behind it, which we would assume we would take this node, and warp speed probably. The node precognition will give you an extra second for every like headshot kill you get, and then you can get 20% movement speed. So just on its face, this ability not only gives you really, really good buffs while it's going, it does also have an effect positively for you after the ability concludes. After the ability concludes, you carry over its effects for the next 10 seconds, and guess what? This ability only has a 25-second cooldown. This class has a 60% cooldown reduction talent that is just constantly going, so you're going to end up having only about 5 seconds or so where you don't have this ability active. And those are the only 5 seconds where you won't have some form of buff from Scryer's Gaze. So Scryer's Gaze is insane and has no downside. It doesn't turn around. It doesn't say, oh yeah, and by the way, when Scryer's Gaze ends, your HP drops to 1 and every enemy in the area is immediately taunted to you. Like that's like how they had to balance this, right? Why does Scryer's Gaze not cause you to fucking peril overload and go down when it ends? That would be balanced. If we're gonna give characters a big DPS story, we might as well make certain that they fucking die the second the ability ends, right? This sort of ability with Rampage here and this exhaustion is such a huge fucking negative, and the ability is nowhere near good enough to justify it. I don't even know if there's any melee ability in the game, Scryer's Gaze or otherwise. I just don't think this is a good idea for melee in general, because what's it gonna do, right? You have a 10-second cap on this duration. For the Psyker, when you're in Scryer's Gaze, what are you doing? You are gas. You got to get to that next group up there and start fucking slashing them, because that's how you quell your peril and keep your Scryer's Gaze going. That's what you want to do. And besides, you got plenty of time. If you can't get there, quell some peril and run over there, right? And you're fast as fuck too. This class with Rampage, you are not fast. You are slower than a Scryer's Gaze Psyker. Somehow, Psykers are fucking blitzing past you because there's no additional movement speed on a fucking melee ability. And guess what? If you have 5 seconds left in this ability, you look at that group of enemies over there and you're like, I don't think I'm going to make it to that group of enemies or get hits on them in time. I'll just wait it out. Because if you run over there and you don't get any hits, what happens? You lose all your stamina and you take 25% extra damage when you're in the middle of fucking combat. And now everything's aggroed on you and you can't block or shove, so you're fucked. So the better solution for Rampage is to just sit there, do nothing, and wait for the ability to run out and wait to get it back and then go into combat, which just takes... it's like we have two abilities here that both of these characters are supposed to be all gas and no brakes. Fucking go, get in there. They want to be on the front lines. They want to be in the fray and fighting. But one of them has this invisible foot of the game hovering over the driving instructor brake pedal, and it just fucking slams on that brake when it ends, and all of a sudden you come crashing down. There goes more than half of your DPS. You are weakened, you are vulnerable to damage, and you just get your shit rocked. Cool. Very cool. I love that. So yeah, it's just gonna make you, if you're playing wisely with this ability, you're just gonna sit out and wait for your fucking timer until you can actually go in and have fun. Meanwhile, Scryer's Gaze Psykers are like, woohoo! I'm running around the fucking battlefield. I need to keep my peril low. Like I can do anything. Like it's fucking amazing to play Scryer's Gaze. And that is a really big problem because guess what? Like, these classes are competing with each other. If you enjoy being a mile a minute, super evasive, high DPS glass cannon fighter, well, you can just play Psyker. Psyker's free, and it's really, really fucking good. So, like, you have to make this class be able to compete with its direct competition. And speaking of direct competition, there's another really big problem with this ability, with Rampage, which is that it requires you to get hits on enemies. And if you can't get hits on enemies, it fades. Well, guess what doesn't happen as often as you progress in having more skilled teammates alongside you? They start to hit the enemies that you're hitting, and they kill enemies for you. So like other teammates are hanging around each other, and they're like, oh, the Ogren and the Zealot are fighting side by side, and the Ogren's like, I got that one for you, boss. There you go, Shouty. He says, thank you, dear Ogren. Good job. I just sound like Hate Mace, I think, for that one. But like, yeah, they're cooperating. They like to hit each other's targets because it kills them faster. They capitalize on each other. If you go and start meleeing the same fucking enemies that the Hive Scum is meleeing when he's got Rampage going, he's like, what the fuck are you doing, dude? My cooldown, god damn it. And that's how you feel, speaking from experience, when you have competent players on your team. You go into a nice thick horde, but then a flame staff Psyker bursts flame on all of them. So like the dudes you're about to melee and get time back off of, they're just dead now. So now your timer runs out. So I literally played a game with a 4-stack, and we had a Scryer's Gaze Psyker and a Flame Staff Psyker on there, and I don't think I kept an ability going for longer than 15 seconds because I could like activate it and melee an enemy like 3 times, and then I'd turn around, and like most other stuff was like would be dead before I could reach it because again, you're not that fast, and that fucking blows. Okay, so let's go past there and go to the Keystones and talk about how these Keystones are fundamentally different and worse. I'm gonna focus on Adrenaline Frenzy here. I know that Chemical Dependency is good. Like it's a pretty good Keystone. It'd be good on most classes. I don't have any problems with Chemical Dependency, I don't think. But I do have a problem with Adrenaline Frenzy, which is when you get a melee hit. This is the Hive Scum Keystone, by the way, for melee. When you get a melee hit, you get a stack of Adrenaline. Getting a crit gives you an additional stack. If you don't gain a stack within 2 seconds, you'll lose a stack instead. So you lose 1 stack every 2 seconds, and you can gain them as fast as you can hit or crit. At 30 stacks, you get Adrenaline Frenzy, and you lose all your stacks. So that means that you gain 10% attack speed and 25% melee damage for 10 seconds. Let's be generous here and assume that for both of these Keystones, for both Disrupt Destiny, which we'll take for the Psyker, and for this one here, we'll use 1 additional point. We'll buy ourselves Stoked Rage here to increase the duration of Adrenaline Frenzy to 20 seconds. And on the Disrupt Destiny side, we'll be a fucking pleb and we'll choose Lingering Influence. We'll extend Disrupt Destiny from 5 seconds to 10 seconds. So that's what we get. We get 20 seconds of 25% melee damage and 10% attack speed after we build up 30 stacks here. And then we got to build those up again in order to keep it active. What do we get for Disrupt Destiny? Well, when we kill a target that is marked, every second it marks a new target, and when you kill one that's marked, it marks another target. And killing one gives you some toughness, and it also gives you a stacking damage buff. 1% damage, 2% crit damage, and 2.5% weak spot damage. It stacks 15 times. When that duration ends, 1 stack is removed and the duration is refreshed. So it would take you a full 150 seconds to lose all of these stacks, and it would take you 20 seconds to lose all of the effect of this one. So let's assume this happens, right? You go and you have a combat at the midway point, and there's an elevator. I'm imagining like the Forge level, right? There's an elevator afterwards. You clean up all these enemies. Both of you get your abilities active and your Keystones active. The Scryer has 15 stacks. The Hive Scum has Adrenaline Frenzy active. Then you go in the elevator and you come out the other end. It's 30 seconds later. The Hive Scum has no stacks of Adrenaline Frenzy, and they have no Adrenaline Frenzy buff. So they have to not only build back all 30 stacks before they get any buff, but they don't have any buff right now. The Psyker has lost 3 of his 15 stacks. So he's still got 12 out of 50. He's still got 80% effectiveness on his Keystone, and it's so much easier to retain like that. Like, that is the problem. So he goes into combat and he's already ready to go. He is already charged up partially, and he can very easily get those stacks back. you have to fight from a huge fucking deficit in order to get Adrenaline Frenzy, and guess what? 10% attack speed and 25% melee damage is 0% as good as potentially 15% damage, 30% critical damage, and what would that be? Like 37.5% weak spot damage. Like, plus you get toughness and movement speed over time when you get a kill on one of those marked targets. Like, insane. This Disrupt Destiny is so much better than this node, and it can be triggered with both melee and range. So if there's a target that's too far away, you can just pull out your gun and shoot them. You have to be actively engaged in melee with Adrenaline Frenzy. And what happens if you're surrounded by tons of enemies and then most of the hordes get taken out by horde clearing characters? Well, you can only melee like 1 or 2 enemies. You're gonna get like 1 or 2 stacks. If you're just like fighting a crusher, it'll take you like 20 hits to get those stacks up. So, like, this class does fine. It seems like it's all well and good when you are the aggressive DPS, when you are on the front lines and you are cutting your swath through the horde, when you are the vanguard and you are the one who's like the horde is gathered around and you're going each way with the daggers and you've got a million stacks of everything. Your cooldown is like on Adrenaline Frenzy, you're stacking up the stacks there. Your cooldown is maxed on Rampage. That is when it feels amazing. When it doesn't feel amazing is when things get a little bit more sparse, when there's not enemies crowded around you and you have to make gaps between areas of the map. Everything on the class fully resets and crashes back down to 0, and then you have to get it all started up again from a cold engine. And that is shit. That really, really sucks, because you cannot be going into a combat starting out in a bad situation, and then you ramp up, and then you come crashing back down again in the middle of the fucking combat because Rampage goes off of cooldown and you get like nerfed to the ground. So this class is super uneven, and it just in the offensive experience. Like, you cannot consistently expect to have the damage when you need the damage, because stims have their own cooldown, the ult has its own cooldown, Adrenaline Frenzy has its own cooldown. You're monitoring like 6 different cooldowns at the same time, and you need them all to align in order to get your like actual peak damage. Meanwhile, what is the Psyker doing? The Psyker activates Scryer's Gaze. The only thing they have to worry about is kill the targets that are highlighted in blue and make certain your peril doesn't overload. Wow. And even if it does, you just activate it again in a couple seconds, right? That's all you have to do as the Psyker. Meanwhile, the fucking Hive Scum over here is like doing trigonometry to figure out when his abilities are going to be all like lined up so he can do similar damage to the Psyker. Ludicrous. Anyway, let's talk about defenses. There is a big problem here as well. So obviously, both these classes are focused around dodging as their primary form of defense. You know, it should be no surprise because both of them have anticipation, 50% increased dodge duration, meaning the amount of time that the dodge counts as dodging is increased by 50%. That is the exact same thing as Nimble's time considered dodging increased by 50%. It just Nimble makes your dodge actually physically longer, and anticipation gives you an extra dodge. I'll take anticipation any day of the week. An extra dodge is way better than a slightly longer dodge. So yeah, those two classes have those sort of things. But the real kicker here is how can they sustain themselves in combat? Because people will say, oh, just dodge, right? Just dodge everything. If you get good at dodging, you won't take any damage, right? You could dodge all range attacks, all melee attacks. But can you? Can you really? Like in Darktide, I know this is true of Slayer, Barden, because Vermintide is a much more simple game. There is very little going on. There aren't ranged nonsense enemies that are just chilling in the corners of every map ready to pop up and shoot you when you're in the middle of a fight, right? There aren't Tox Bombers, which I'm going to make a fucking focus of this part here, that will smoke off an entire hectare of the map that you can't seem to find your way out of, right? That doesn't exist. There's a Globadier who will put a single circle on the ground, and if you stand in that, you're fucking stupid. But a Tox Bomb is like next to unavoidable in high-level games. Like the game will spawn like 7 of these dudes and just absolutely flood the map with the Tox gas. And when you are surrounded by not only the melee enemies that you're directly fighting, but the chip damage from random gunshots or from a tick from fire or a tick from gas, right? Those sort of little things matter a lot when you don't have toughness replenishment. And there is a tiered sort of system to toughness replenishment, guys. I've talked about it before, but the replenishment system goes like this. Anything that you have to actively do is worse than anything that passively regenerates your toughness. So the worst case scenario is you have to actually get a kill. The second worst case scenario is you have to get a hit, and then the best case scenario, there's a couple things in the middle as well, but the best case scenario is it just happens passively. So what's going to happen if you as a Hive Scum or as a melee Psyker are in a combat with some enemies? Say you've got like a bulwark and like a regular scab dude in front of you, and you're in the combat with those enemies, and a pox bomb detonates next to you. Well, guess what? That pox bomb, I don't know why it is, but I feel like it's not this hard on other classes, but it fucking shreds Hive Scum toughness. Your toughness breaks in like 2 ticks, so you immediately start taking damage. And in order to sustain your toughness as Hive Scum, what are your options? Assuming we took every single toughness regeneration talent in this tree, if we're a melee Hive Scum, we can get 4% toughness for a melee hit, or a weak spot or a crit is 8, and a weak spot and crit is 12. We can get, looking down here, we can activate our ability, assuming our ability is not already active. That'll give us all our toughness back instantly, but it's probably already active because we were in combat, right? We could get shot by a ranged enemy, but not have our toughness broken with Tisbet a Scratch. But unfortunately, we just had our toughness broken by the gas, so that's not an effect. And Burst of Energy, which gives you your toughness back 50% when your toughness is broken. But the problem with that is since the Pox gas breaks your toughness in like 2 ticks, it breaks your toughness, and then it breaks your toughness again. It breaks the second burst of energy, so you don't have that either. So the only way you have left is all the way down at the bottom of the tree with Toxic Renewal, or maybe you have Adrenaline Unbound. If Adrenaline Frenzy is active, you have 5% per second. And Toxic Renewal if you can kill an enemy that's affected by Chem Toxin. And that's pretty much it, because no one is fucking taking a stim that gives them 50% of the toughness back on a 48-second cooldown. No thank you. So yeah, the Adrenaline Frenzy here is like the only thing you got going, 5% per second if this is active. And guess what you're going to have to do, right? In that case, you cannot stand and fight in that situation. You have to get the fuck out of the gas immediately. It is not a walk, it is a run, because you are not regenerating any toughness. The really cool thing about the way that Pox gas works with other classes in toughness is it does break their toughness pretty fast, but guess what? It doesn't hurt your health on the same tick that it breaks your toughness. So if you have a regenerative effect, try this out, guys. Go in with the Ogren and take the talent at the top of the tree. It's called braced. It's whatever. When you brace your gun, you get 12.5% of your toughness per second. Next time you get pox bombed, pull out your gun and brace it. What'll happen is you'll go down to 0% toughness, but then you'll regenerate toughness, and then it'll chip it down again. You'll regenerate toughness, it'll chip it down again. You'll never take any health damage. You can sit there and breathe it. So what happens is, because other classes, like the melee Psyker, have smooth, constant regenerative effects when they get some of their toughness back, if you're in Scryer's Gaze, you get in 2.5% of your toughness per second. So that means that every second, you gain a little bit back, and then the Tox gas chips it off. You gain it back, it chips it off. So you can sit in Tox gas, yes, you'll have no toughness, but you won't start bleeding your health damage, which is amazing, because that will give you time to extricate yourself from that situation. And if you wanted to sit there and actually fight the fight, you can fight the fight in the gas, because you can just regenerate and keep it from deleting your HP. The Hive Scum cannot do that. For some reason, the Hive Scum is super vulnerable to the gas, and he has to actively hit stuff. He has to actively hit stuff and kill stuff to get his toughness back, and even then, it's not that good. So, like, compare this, guys. Compare Precision Violence: 4% toughness on hit, 8% on critical strike or weak spot hit, and 12% on critical weak spot strike. What do I get if I get a critical weak spot hit on Force Greatsword Psyker? I trigger Metal for 10% toughness over 4 seconds. I also trigger Warp Expenditure, because if I kill them, I get 15% toughness over 3 seconds, and I gain 2.5% of my toughness instantly. So how much toughness did I get for getting a hitting like a single Poxwalker in the head with a melee crit? I got 27.5% of my toughness back, and it's over time. So like if I'm capped on toughness and then I take damage, like a scab shooter shoots me after I kill that enemy, well, guess what? That buff is still active on me, so I'll regain the toughness instantly as soon as as soon as that damage is done, it starts refilling the portion that, as long as that buff is still active, which is the best part of all. So having proactive buffs like that, like if you've just got a buff on you that says, hey, like right now you're regenerating like 50% of your toughness per second. If you take any damage during that time, it's great because you just replenish it, replenish it, replenish it. That's where like things like bubble are amazing, because if you take the damage, it's immediately refilling your toughness and stopping you from getting hurt in the interim. Reactive buffs or reactive talents like, oh, I got hit, now I need to hit this enemy 4 times and get crit headshots in order to get that 48% of my toughness that I just lost back. That sucks, because that requires you to do something and it takes a long fucking time to do, versus the Psyker, who can get 1 melee crit headshot and then back the fuck off and regain 25% of the toughness. Or let's take this to like logical absurdities, right? Let's just be like the complete absurd upper scaling of this. What happens when we have that tox gas drop in and there's one enemy in front of us? We have a singular dude in front of us, and we're Hive Scum. Well, our toughness gets broken. We hit him. Let's say we get a melee crit here. We get all of our toughness back, or we get 12% of our toughness back, and then we get the fuck out of the gas and we lose a bunch of our HP in the meantime. Let's compare that to the Psyker. Oh, and by the way, when you retreat, now there's no enemies around you, so you lose your Rampage ability and you go on cooldown, and you are now crippled and you have no stamina, and your Adrenaline Frenzy falls off and you go to 0% damage and you live there for the rest of your life. For the Psyker, if that enemy happened to be the enemy that's near me and no one else is near me, they're very likely highlighted with just Disrupt Destiny. So what happens when I kill them with a crit headshot with the Force Greatsword? Well, I gain 27.5% toughness between Warp Expenditure and Metal. I'm also in Scryer's Gaze, so I'm gaining 2.5% of my toughness each second. I also have a Quietude, which is giving me 4% of my toughness for each 10% of my peril generated. So I'm just constantly regenerating a small amount because of Scryer's Gaze generating peril for me. And then if that enemy was highlighted by Disrupt Destiny, I'm going to get an additional 25% over 2.5 seconds. So all told, I'll probably regain roughly 60% of my toughness in the next 5 seconds or so with 1 kill, and I will be replenishing my toughness during this phase so that I won't be eating a million fucking corruption damage at the same time. So there you see like where these defenses aren't equal. And there's one more that I really want to point out that just makes me so mad that doesn't exist on the Hive Scum. The Psyker gets Empathic Evasion. Empathic Evasion says a critical hit makes you count as dodging against ranged attacks for 1 second. This single-handedly makes the Psyker so good in melee, because he can be aggressive in melee and get on a Reaper or get on a pack of Gunners or whatever and just cut them to ribbons and not worry that there's another guy over across the room who's shooting at him, because as long as he's getting crits at a certain rate, which he's really good at doing, he is safe from those ranged attacks. And that can be applied by both ranged and melee. And this is what enables him to take fights where he wants to take fights versus like having to hide behind corners. So many times with the Scum, you cannot take a fight in a certain location because there's too many ranged enemies that can see that location from where you are. So you have to be like, okay, guys, come. Hey, can you guys come over here around this corner behind this wall so the Gunners can't shoot me at the same time? Because if you're in combat and a Gunner, like if you dodge to avoid a Crusher overhead or something, and then the second the dodge ends, you get shot by a range attack, well, you just lost a big chunk of your toughness, and now the next attack you hit, that hits you is gonna fucking delete you. So like, one of these classes can just ignore the fact that there are ranged enemies shooting at them. The other one has just extra bullshit to dodge that is effectively impossible to dodge, because you can't be dodging both the ranged attacks and the melee attacks that are coming at you at the same time. And you also just can't replenish the toughness that's going to happen. So you have to be super scared about the way that you approach each individual combat. And this is the real kicker. This is the thing at the end of the day, guys, right? Like, it's okay. Like, I love having these glass cannon designs. Like, the Melee Psyker is my favorite class to play right now. It is just the most fun way to play because it's so fast. You are zipping around. You are doing so much damage. You're cutting dudes' heads off. You're using a fucking huge-ass Buster Sword. It is so cool. And it feels good too, because if you don't dodge damage, if you aren't evasive and strategic about the way you approach situations, you're going to get dunked on. and that means it's a high skill character. It feels good to execute on it. The same cannot be done with the scum, because you are so fragile and you don't have any defensive layers. You don't have any preventative defenses that can stop you from getting blown up. So on a whim, on a single accident, you are dead, and that makes you have this apprehension that means you won't go as hard. It is high risk, high reward to play these glass cannon classes, right? But the risk at a certain point becomes so high that, like, when the risk is, hey, if I fight these 3 crushers right here and there's gunners that can see me, there's a good chance that the gunners are just going to kill me. I gotta wait, I gotta pull them back and wait it out. That is not high reward. That is too high a risk to go in and get the reward. So the risks are just too high. There's no way for this character to effectively mitigate them. And it just leads to a bummer of a combat cycle. You also might end up just sitting out the combat against the crushers in general because your rampage ability is inactive and your stamina is low, right? So, or your stim isn't ready. There's a ton of cooldowns you're waiting on in order to have these like peak fights. And yeah, there's so many situations where you just can't engage. You can't get into the thick of things. And this is where like zealots, you know, like Stealth Zealot and which was the other one I thought about comparing to, like Stealth Dagger Zealot and the Scryer's Gaze Force Greatsword Psyker. Those guys get into the fray of things and they're dodging and they're sliding and they're staying in the action and they're going. And as long as you are active and you're playing and you're aware of what's going on around you, you do have a little bit of forgiveness. The Zealot can get hit and then dodge and gain 50% of his toughness back. He can use his ability to cloak and get the fuck out of there and re-engage. The Psyker can land 1 solid hit on a target and gain a big percentage of their toughness back over the next couple seconds. They can go on the defensive and block a bunch of stuff using the sword and what's the kinetic deflection, just block a bunch of attacks for a second or two while they recuperate to get themselves into a better position and re-engage. You can't do that. You can't even spare a single second to catch your breath with this class, because yeah, you have to stay on the aggressive and you have to kill enemies before they get too many attacks on you, or else one of them will inevitably eventually land, or something will change about the combat parameters of the environment, and it'll force you like a pox gas, or like there's a burster who's threatening one side of the map. Like that sort of stuff will happen, and it'll force you out of position. And being forced out of position, being forced to take the engagement in a place you don't want to take it, is bad. This is what Melee needs to be able to do, is to say, this is my position. I am holding this against the enemies. I am going to fight this enemy in this area here because this is the best place to fight them. I don't want them to move over here where it's going to be trickier for me to move or to evade or to block this other line of sight. And this character cannot do that. They cannot stand their ground. If enemies push on them and they can't kill them immediately, they have to fall back and be routed from their position. The other melee classes can move around in like a circle and can tank damage from off angles. Like a Zealot can dodge, can take a bullet and then dodge and then regain the toughness that it took from that bullet by doing that dodge. So he can just be like, fuck it, I'll take this dude shooting me from behind if I can just make certain that this crusher doesn't push me backwards into that fire over there. This class has to be like, well, I can't go out there because that gunner is going to shoot me. Like, or that area has too many gunners and stuff in it. I'll lose toughness going out there. I guess got to go in the fire. Like, I don't know where I'm going. Like, that is the situation. Is like, there's no way to deal with the amount of stuff that is going on in the game in general right now, and it leaves you to play scared. You have to play, and I'm a skilled player too, guys. So like, I know people will say get good in the comments, and I'm kind of trying to wrap up here. I'm rambling at this point, but like, people will say get good, but there's only so good that many people are gonna get. And I really feel for the people that were thinking, as I thought initially as well, that this class was gonna end up being more accessible and more playable. I thought it was maybe just me at first, because it was honestly like I was playing solos most of the time. But even when given a team to kind of support you, it's still a really rough experience. It is still a really rough experience because singular mistakes can lead to downfall. And I just don't think that's a good base design for anything in the game. I think that the game's base design for all characters should be accessible, and then you can choose options to make yourself into a glass cannon on the classes that are designed around that, right? There should be an option to, you know, I think it should be like, you know, I think Reginald was saying the same thing in my chat yesterday. It's like uh, the RBDs is all tank, right? There should be an option for the RBDs to drop the tank and to go DPS. I know there isn't, right? As a matter of design, he's supposed to be tanky, but like, if you want to have classes that are glass cannon, give players a way to choose to opt out of that, because it's not fun for everybody. And especially it's not fun when it is a paid class. That just, like, a lot of people just fundamentally cannot play, and they might have bought it and now they're like, shit, I can't hack it here. And that really just breaks my heart, because like some people might have saved money for this and like been super excited for it. And for whatever part I did, like, you know, misleading people, I tried to be pretty straight up with you guys as far as I could be while my NDA was up. It's like, this class is fucking hard and you get no toughness back. It is super fucking frail. So hopefully that was indicative. But now that you guys have experienced it, this is why I put these videos out now, days after you guys have had your hands on it, is because it is, like, if I told you this before, you'd be like, nah, just get good, bro. Like, yeah, it's glass cannon. Like, they describe it as glass cannon, duh. But now that you get your hands on it, I bet so many more of you are like, oh my god, I see what you mean now. Like, holy shit. Like, you make one fucking error and it's all over. Anyway, guys, I do have a bit of an expose. I'm going to try to put it out tonight as well, talking about why some of these errors are going on, because the game's kind of fucked right now, as many of you might have noticed in little ways, shapes, or forms. We'll talk about that a little later on. Like and subscribe if you made it this far. Give your mom a hug for me. Like, in a nice way. I'm not fucking with your mom or anything. I just, you know, appreciate your parents or your loved ones in your life. And I'll talk to you later. Thanks for watching, guys. Have a good one. Bye-bye.